Committee meeting to order. Today's Tuesday, 5 o'clock, and the first item on the agenda is consideration of Public Works Committee meeting minutes from March 19th first, and then we'll do April. Any comments on the March meeting?
Move for approval.
I will second. Okay, motion is second. Any comments, questions, changes? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item is approval of the committee meeting minutes from April 23rd.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Next item is the review of our 5-year capital projects. And the spreadsheet in front of you. Tom, you weren't here at our last. Thank you. We will move up item number 4. I think Denny's here for that, and we'll get that item taken care of first and then get into budgetary issues. I had requested at the last city council meeting that we refer back to Public Works just for discussion the idea of just reviewing bench guidelines in terms of their design and placement. And Denny has quite a bit of history. There's a letter that he sent to each one of us. And Denny, I would just ask if you'd share your thoughts with us on this, please.
Well, in regards to the benches in the down, my comments are more addressed towards downtown area, not the public park system itself. But as far back as 1987, 1988, the city had a plan for 2nd Street improvements, including lights, benches, trash receptacles, and so forth. The issue with the downtown area in particular, our sidewalks are extremely narrow and limited in space upon where trash receptacles, benches can be placed. The first consideration for the city has to be is retaining minimally a 5-foot walk area, and that is primarily to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act, make sure that pedestrian access is provided. Sidewalks typically are divided into 3 areas. One is about a 2-foot area from the building front, which basically considered viewing area of the building, particularly in older retail, the way the windows are presented in older towns, so retail area. Somebody can stop and look in the windows as far as the retail sales and so forth. The second area is the pedestrian area, which is typically anywhere from a 5 to 6 foot area, if not wider, where the pedestrians generally move from areas from one end of the block to the other. And then third is the sidewalk or curb area, which basically is a loading area, somebody getting out of a car, so forth. Again, benches, when Tom and I reviewed it, our concern was for the Rotary, going back to the Rotary consideration is that our concern, if benches were put next to the curbs, it creates a couple of problems. One, could they possibly be hit by cars? That's a liability issue. Secondly is snow removal. So our preference would have been at that point to have benches placed closer to the buildings if possible, unless there's areas that cars aren't parking adjacent to the sidewalk. And there was one area on Locust Street that was possible. Back in '87, when we were looking at doing the plans for 2nd Street, the benches were only proposed in 2 locations on 2nd Street, and that was both on the east side of 2nd Street between Walnut Street and Locust Street, where the sidewalk is the widest area of downtown Hudson, and then they were moved a little bit closer to the curb. So other than that, there's pretty limited areas, and if the city's going to consider a policy for placing benches in the downtown area, we have to, 1, make sure it's a 5-foot wide access area, and then secondly, placement next to curbs ought to be very closely scrutinized from a liability issue. There are opportunities in downtown Hudson that benches can be placed on private properties. In some cases, there is private property in front of the buildings, so they wouldn't necessarily have to be placed on the public sidewalk area. But I guess if the city wants to consider a policy, when it's placed on the public sidewalk, I would suggest that an application be forwarded to the city. It'd be reviewed. I guess the question is, do you want to go back to a committee, or administratively can the staff? The other issue that was discussed previously at the last council meeting was design of benches. I think particularly in more of the historic designated area on 2nd Street, you may want to go to a more decorative architectural style bench. Now, once you get off on the side streets, where that's as important or not, because you have less historical significance in those neighborhoods. And even the Locust Street neighborhood has one or two historically architectural, but there's a lot of eclectic mix of architecture in that area. There's also more of particularly on the south side, the type of shops that are located there lend themselves a little more towards an artsy, if I can use that term.
You can use that term.
Consideration. So I think you got to be careful where you want to require just one type of bench throughout the downtown, or allow some flexibility outside the designated historic area for other types of benches. But I guess the question is, how do you want those applications to come to the city of Hudson?
Mm-hmm. And honestly, that was one problem I had with the decision that was made. Was it wasn't really a plan put forward by the city. It was some business owners saying they wanted benches, and Rotary coming in and graciously donating them, but saying, here's what we're giving you, with really no input from the city saying, this is what we'd like the benches to look like. We are trying to preserve that, historic nature in the downtown, and I just think we need to have a plan. And obviously, as long ago as 1987, they were talking about this. And Danny, I think you're right. We're pretty limited as far as locations go. Did you, in part of your letter, you said that, and not to nitpick, but they should be at least 3 feet back from the curb and placed perpendicular to the curb?
Well, if you've got space, again, the amount of sidewalk area is going to dictate where benches can even go in or not.
Right.
Because the first priority has to be that minimally a 5-foot wide area. If you can't meet that, you're not going to place benches, period. In areas where you may have, again, going back to that 1987 plan on the east side of 2nd Street between Walnut and Locust Street, if you place benches, typically the design that they suggest is to place the benches perpendicular to the curb and about 3 feet back from the curb, if there's enough room to do that. Now, does that mean you may have to go down to 4-foot benches instead of 6? Perhaps. So, again, you have to take all those things. Instead of a 6-foot, typically most benches are proposed are 6 foot in length. But you could go down to a 4-foot length of bench to make it fit. And secondly, either they talk about them being face-to-face perpendicular to the curb, or one bench being perpendicular to the curb and the second being perpendicular to the other bench or parallel to the curb. So, and that's to engage people to sit down and talk and so forth. But those are design considerations. So you can do that, but there may only be, at least the way our sidewalks are now configured, there may only be one area in all downtown, and that's on the east side of 2nd Street between Walnut and Locust that even permit that.
And here's my question. With what was approved at the last council meeting with the Rotary benches, it sounds like you have concerns that there's room for them?
Well,
I
guess the question is, the Rotary did call back and said they would provide benches without the Rotary on the back.
Okay.
They have agreed to do that. I guess, the other question is, how flexible may be the Rotary be? Are they willing to go down to 4-foot benches? Are they willing to provide, how much flexibility would they want to? And then the third question is the blue proposed benches, is that the style you want throughout downtown Hudson, or is there certain areas, yes, they could be placed, no? And if the answer is no, we want benches in some areas, then we should come up with a style of bench that the city council can agree upon. And that becomes the first priority in some locations.
And I guess I have concerns about putting them in front of specific businesses because, well, we'd all like to think those businesses will be here for a long time. We don't know how long they will be. And so really it makes the most sense to put them where they physically fit, you know, the width of the sidewalk, et cetera.
And excuse me, I think I mentioned, you know, their question is, you know, the business, if we're going to put benches in front of businesses, we got to get a sign off by the business also. They may want pedestrians to walk up to the windows or up to the front of the building. So I don't think we necessarily want to preclude that in our policy, but give it some consideration as far as, you know, allowing the business to have some. I mean, most of these benches could be located where in some future date they could be removed. I don't think that's a problem, is it, Tom? So
I don't think so.
Thoughts from the committee?
Well, one thing that I don't know if it's an issue at this very moment, but I think we need to prepare for it is to have too many benches. You know, these articles that Denny provided, you know, it talks in there about how there can be too many. You know, they should be serving a purpose. So, and if there's one in front of every business, not saying there ever would be, but hypothetically, I think that would be overkill on it and to the point of cluttered. So I think any policy should address that.
Would it be reasonable, Tom, for you and Danny, or either of you or both of you, to go through downtown, and maybe you have already, and say these are the areas where we think there's room for benches where they make sense? Not that you don't take into consideration what the businesses are at all, but just from a physical standpoint, this is where it makes sense, and you come back and you say there's really 6 locations or 8 locations, and we kind of go from there instead of saying these 2 businesses want a bench, we'll just put them in. And can we step back that far and just say this is where?
well, I think that's, you know, I don't want to answer for Tom, but I'm willing to spend time to go through the downtown and take a look. Typically, as those articles mentioned, the benches, if you're going to put them, are towards the end of the block, towards the pedestrian crossings, but not interfering with the pedestrian crossings, and typically towards the 2 ends. So I mean, that's where we'd be looking. That'd be the first location we'd want to take a look at in any of the blocks of downtown Hudson. Again, the first priority is going to be the width of sidewalk, where there even a possibility of placing them. A lot of those areas may be precluded.
So as part of that, you know, identifying where those locations would be, can you also determine how large the bench could be, how long it could be?
Oh,
That could be
yeah.
part of the...
That'd be part of the suggestion or recommendations, Paul, and we can draft a policy for you to bring back for consideration. I just didn't want to do it until I heard comments from the committee as far as trying to get some direction on this issue. So
Okay.
We did put in the issue sheet that, you know, generally in the parks, we use a certain style of bench. It's recycled plastic, it's brown, it's we've had it in a couple cases where you can actually put a logo of whoever would donate it. It would would simplify things, but, you know, like Denny stated, maybe some parts of the city would like more of a decorative style, but for simplification, something like that might be an option. Be just a standard bench that you could put in the parks and city, and, you know, you could put your logo on that also, but that's something that I guess you have to decide. If you want more of a decorative, painted, colored ones, or stick to something that's more natural look.
I mean, I guess I'm open to other designs other than what's in the park. And I know we're looking at trash cans too. It probably makes sense to look at them together and say,
That's another issue we can talk about when we get into capital.
yeah. But can we get some different styles? Can we look at
Oh, absolutely.
what else is out there and cost and,
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there. What you saw is probably 1/10 of all the information I gleaned from the internet, but there's a lot of information out there as far as the types of benches and so forth. But I think also we can go out and take pictures of the benches that are in the parks, show that, along with what might be proposed as far as decorative type benches in the downtown. And also, if you're going to along 2nd Street, if you're going to have more of the decorative type benches, you'd want your trash receptacles to match those too, so or be a similar type of style.
Randy, any thoughts?
No, I'll reserve my comments until there's actual a policy to go through out of respect for you guys, so I can actually have some poignant questions. However, I'll just remind people that haven't been in Hudson their whole life that there were benches downtown at one time, on the corner of where was that Ben Franklin used to be. What is that, Locust now? Mickelson. So it's not a new thing we're talking about. I understand the design and what you're trying to get at, but I'll reserve comment until I see some kind of policy.
Okay. What other input would you two like from the committee, or do we feel like there's enough to go forward? We'll look at different styles next time.
Styles, location.
Location, size, and then I guess the process. If we think there's a location that makes sense to put one, do we approach the business, that sort of thing? Can businesses approach the city? I guess my hope is that maybe Rotary would hold off on their,
No, I think their message I got, they're willing to work with the city.
okay, that's awesome. So I want to recognize when people do make a donation like that to the city. I think it's reasonable to have.
I think what they'd be asking for is some small plaque on,
Sure.
Not something big, but something at least, not so much the advertisement of Rotary on the back of the bench, but just a small
Just
plaque on it that
acknowledgement.
recognizes that it was
Absolutely.
donated in part by the Rotary.
Yep.
Or another sponsor.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yep. Appreciate having the history there, and we'll revisit it again next meeting. Okay, jumping back to item 2, reviewing 5-year capital projects. Well, Neil, do you want to share your thoughts?
I think what you have in front of you, there have been some additions that I've gotten from Public Works Department onto here, and I know that if you look at what you have, it has the parks on the top, and then it extends back into Public Works. And what I tried to do is I tried to highlight some of the changes
Yep.
that have been added, and we can go through those real quick. And that for mower replacement, originally there were, for the next 3 years, and that's now been amended to add a mower a year. If you turn to the second page, you can see where we've actually, I think, shifted the year on a truck, but we're also planning for the purchase of a 1-ton truck every year. Going down further, looking at kind of the public buildings section, I got a revised figure for the upgrades to HVAC at City Hall, but I think more significant here is the roof repairs for the 700 First Street building. We have already appropriated $100,000 for this, and apparently the conversations that Tom has had with the contractor is that it's probably closer to a $300,000 job. So that's why that $200 there is an additional cost.
Did we put that out for bid?
We have not. The price that I believe Tom has gotten is from Garland Companies, and that all their costs on a per unit basis have already been bid on a national basis. So, I mean, we could elect to go with them. It has been bid, but we don't have to. But at least that gives us a good comparison. And if you look at their bids, it's, I don't know, it's, 20, 30 pages, and it's line item by line item. If you have X amount of flashing, it's X amount per linear foot installed. So, I mean, it's a pretty good bid, but, I mean, it has been publicly bid, so that, we do have that ability to use that. On this sheet, under storm sewer rehab, that number, instead of in budget, should be $200,000. We did, again, we had the $15,000, was it 30 or 15,000 for garbage cans downtown. I think, based upon, Denny's previous comments, that number becomes up in the air, depending on what style of garbage can that you would like. On and beyond that, you have the whole panoply of road projects that has not changed. I think, Tom has some information in terms of a proposal to utilize the $230,000 for maintenance that was already appropriated. But I think when you look at this in total, if you go on to the last page, you can see the requests that have previously been funded, and this has what's been carried over from prior years that remains to be done, but also reflects the action that's been taken by the Common Council so far this year. But in total, right now, you're looking at, for 2013, $2.5 million worth of public works requests, and almost 2.165 in 2014. And that would be on top of the roughly $700,000 that has already been appropriated.
Okay.
I know, we did look or, talk previously about road maintenance needs and the state program. And this is probably way too much, but I mean, it's good food for thought. Let me hand this out. What you have in front of you, this came off the state's Whistler system, and these are somewhat canned reports, but gives you, it kind of dials in what the scope of projects. If you use and more on the capital project, we're using numbers on a square foot basis that Karen provided. Again, this is dealing with the roads. It's not dealing with any other infrastructure underneath the roads that may be incidental or at times more than incidental to the project. But if you look at the needs analysis, what it's saying is currently our needs analysis for capital projects, road projects, is $3.9 million and $600,000 for maintenance. If you turn the page after that, you can see both I think on the next two pages, it breaks them down, those numbers down by type of street for both capital and maintenance cost. Kind of the third section here is a needs analysis, where street by street, it lists the maintenance and capital costs. It's kind of interesting to review. But I think probably most important in here, there are kind of three sections in back where you can run kind of a forecast, and the system will, based upon the phaser ratings, will have recommended actions. And I put this out, it's more for understanding of the process. But I looked at really three different things, and I think the first one, if you look up on top, I think I have it captured 1M for 5 years.
What page is that now?
Oh, it's about halfway
That
back, and it
first-
has a little circle on top.
Right up to the dark sheet.
Yeah, right. I kind of put the dark
Right
sheets
after
in.
the dark
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, but if you look there, if we budgeted $1 million a year for 5 years, what you'll see is that we wouldn't use the whole million in year 5. But the circle is the real key. There's no backlog in terms of maintenance after 5 years.
So how come it goes a million, 200, 200, 200?
You are back
no.
too far.
Okay,
You're at scenario number 2.
okay, got it,
If you go up 3 pages.
okay. Okay. Got it.
So here, $1 million a year wipes out a backlog. And then this list, this is really the recommended, if you're going to spend $1 million this year, this would be the recommended, according to Whistler, how you would spend that $1 million, and then what treatments would be on which street sections. This is how the program works. For comparison's sake, if you go back to where Lori was, 3 pages back, I said, what would happen if you spent $1 million for the first 2 years and then $200,000 a year? What you'll see in year 1 is the streets are exactly the same. However, by cutting it down to $200,000 a year for the last 3 years, at the end of year 5, you have a $2.1 million backlog of street projects.
Yep,
Neil, if we would spend $1 million for 5 years, I'm looking on this list here, and I understand this is a great way to look at it, but I'm not seeing 6th Street, which is should be total reconstruction.
Right. This is only year 1.
This is the first year.
this
is
is
the
what you
first
would
year.
do in year 1.
This, yeah.
I
Okay,
We'd have a,
was trying to save a few trees. If I wanted to print out all 5 years.
okay.
So you,
This is a great way to do it. I really think this is a good way to approach this, and at least you can see and plan for, for it, that, if we'd make that capital investment of this much money, we can get our streets back in good condition again.
Yeah.
So.
And I think it's kind of interesting because if you look at this and say, here's the rating in year 1, if you carry this out, this is where they anticipate the rating would be in year 5. And the last scenario I showed there was what happens if you spend $500,000 a year for 5 years. Where that gets you is at the end of 5 years, you still have a $2.3 million backlog. Which is fairly significant. But I think, you can use this as a good guide, but a lot of this is determined upon, I think the real key here in looking at it is we're looking at right now a total maintenance needs for our road surfaces of roughly $4.5 million. So I think in looking at a 5-year capital plan, the question becomes how much of this do you want to bite off?
Neil, the figures that we use for the cost for like mill and overlay, did that include, did you work out some figures with Karen? Because,
Yes.
A lot of times they figure just a mill and overlay, where sometimes we do repairs on, catch basins, manholes, and things like that. Was that incorporated in some of these numbers? Or?
What I used is Karen's average costs.
Okay,
And I think those are pretty consistent because when we looked at those, we even looked at what she did for the projects you have listed on for this year.
okay,
And if you divide those out, I think Karen's done, some research and, we put those in there. We can always modify those. The state has their default costs and you can override those for purposes of this. And for some of these, when you look at it,
Our cost was higher than the state.
yeah, our cost was higher than,
It's curb and gutter removal, adjusting catch basins and rings and pavement markings, and I believe all that was in the
right.
information I provided you.
but just for clarification, that's only when we do like a mill and overlay, but for maintenance, like crack filling,
Yeah.
then we don't do the,
No, then
curb
we don't have a replacement, a default. We're using the state's default cost for maintenance.
Yeah.
And on each one of these programs, if you look at those, at any of them, you'll see that when I sorted them first of all by what the capital projects were, and then the maintenance projects. So if you go all the way over to the right-hand column, you'll see the C's and M's. Those are for capital and maintenance. But it's kind of nice to see what the different treatments are recommended for each street, and to see that those, they're not necessarily the same and that they do change. One of the things that's kind of unique in here is that some of the recommendations for our concrete streets are for joint sealing.
Would the maintenance part of this still be approved for capital projects? Because it's over a certain amount of maintenance, would it still be over the whatever years, or would?
That's an interesting question as to what you bond out for and what the average useful life of the project is. But I think, it's something that the city has done as a matter of practice in the past. And unless, legal counsel or bond counsel tells us different, I don't see deviating from that.
What's interesting is looking at this list up against what, we've kind of outlined for this year. I'm seeing Vine Street on Neil's list and Stage Line. I guess I'm not seeing a lot of other areas of overlap.
O'Keefe Road is on there.
St. Croix Street isn't.
I guess maybe I'm having trouble reading the en route, at route, toward road.
En route is the street that it's at,
Yeah.
and the at and toward define, between what blocks.
Okay, so let's look at the first one, Tower Road. From 491 Tower Road to Willis Miller Drive. Is that right?
I don't see Tower Road.
So I'm on the million.
Or on the
million.
last,
On page 2
Oh.
of the million for 5 years, year 1, second page.
are you looking at year 2 for the 500,000?
No, million.
The 1 mil for 5 years is
Okay.
year 1, page 2.
And I'm not suggesting that we abandon our plan. I'm just saying there's some overlap, but it's not. Stage Line is the same, and Vine Street is there as well. But
And I
like
think one of the
Point-
things in here, where it's looking at Vine Street, obviously, we have a major Vine Street, project. And, if you look at even on the capital side, some of the major stuff on Vine Street, it's what, we have the application in for.
Right. But then like Hanley, so where is this from? From,
Hagen Industrial resurfacing, that's what we have planned for this year. Right? Hanley Road, it's like from Hagen Street to Industrial Street.
Hanley's not on this.
Hanley's not on this blue.
Maintenance.
It's on page 2 for maintenance. Hanley appears.
It's not on.
It's on
top.
it's on the mill and overlay.
Oh, that's what, I don't have that list with me, because
Okay.
We just have that in our head because we.
That's on the mill and overlay project
I
list.
guess we should.
So as we go down this list, you guys tell us what is overlapping with what's on the mill and overlap.
First one, O'Keefe Road, we have planned from Hanley Road to Mayor Road, so we hit that one.
Yeah.
Vine Street, we're gonna do some, we didn't do anything, like Neil said, that, we didn't do anything on, 9th Street, from like 5th to 9th because of the potential, project that we're, looking in for a grant.
In the Hanley.
Wisconsin Street, we're gonna, that's part of the project,
Yep.
for 2015. 9th Street, we didn't do, but definitely, is in need. Carmichael Road, Vine to W, we did a portion of that last year. So that, Hanley Road from Hagen to Industrial resurfacing, that's again this year. So some of the major ones we have on there already.
Okay.
7th Street from Vine to St. Croix, we have that for crack filling and seal coating. Actually, so a lot of them that we are planning on are on this list.
Okay. Can we do a, check against this with what we have planned and see what's on this list that we aren't planning on and figure out what the cost difference would be?
That or just prioritize them. Well, you
Yeah.
can figure out the
Yeah.
costs too, but he can pull up, we
Excuse
can
me.
pull up
I
the
think one of the
costs.
things that's kind of interesting that where you put things where you have to evaluate both of them. I know Tom in his street maintenance projects has St. Croix Street in there, And if you look at the Whistler reports and you go down a couple years, it's basically calling for that for a reconstruction probably 3 years from now. So I think that, that's really, the question is, do you want to sit there and, seal coat, flex patch, et cetera, on it right now? Or do you want to sit there and hold off and reconstruct it 3 years from now and use those funds elsewhere? And that's, it's more of an art than a science.
Like St. Croix Street, it's to a point where we had to do something with it, so we've been trying to do some maintenance on it to get us through to the reconstruction. It's one of those streets that gets used a lot. It's one of our major streets that goes from the schools, from 2nd Street out through north of town. It's one of the streets that I get complaints on. It's one of the streets that we continually do maintenance on. I feel that, some of the things that we're gonna do in the maintenance department are gonna get us several years till we can reconstruct. I feel it was a good investment to do maintenance on it, otherwise we'll be reconstructing that sooner than you think. If we do a reconstruction on St. Croix Street, removing 8 inches of concrete from 1st Street to County Road A, it's gonna be millions of dollars, not just $1 million. We're gonna be talking several for removals, curb and gutter. That's gonna be a huge project. So that's, I guess my thinking is I'm trying to maintain that road to get us through the next several years, and I believe by some of the maintenance things that we have done and what we're proposing that are gonna get us those few years. Because
What are we waiting for? I mean, what are we going to avoid? I mean, by prolonging it? I mean, what are we saving it to, what are we waiting
we've never had a commitment to spend $1 million or $2 million a year. We've been getting, the last several years, we've been getting our $150,000 or $200,000. That's what I've been dealing with. We've never had an investment
to just get by?
We've been just getting by at $100,000 or $200,000. I mean, now it's to the point where it's very evident that we need to invest some pretty good amounts of money to get caught up. And like Neil said, if we spend $1 million for the next 5 years, it's very likely that we're going to have some pretty good streets.
That's just preventative maintenance on the majority of these.
Well, and I think
saying
that's one of
4.5
that's one of the
preventative
keys. Is
maintenance.
you look in here, and there's out of that $4.5 million, $600,000 is really preventive maintenance, but it's going to keep the streets that right now are cracks from needing flex patch and getting more and more expensive. So I mean,
Exactly. My point is, the longer we wait on St. Croix Street or any other ones that are so downgraded or denigrated, we're never going to get a right time to buy it. It's just going to be more expensive. So maybe it's time to bite a bigger bullet here, because that's terrible. And I know there's others. How many times do we have to go out and write grants? Will that help? I don't know. I'm not convinced we're doing the right thing on Vine Street yet with this grant writing and not doing it ourselves yet. But we'll see when we get all the reports in. Mike, we can't wait anymore. We're just pushing it off the inevitable, and as we do, it's costing more, and we keep throwing more money down it, more money down it. By the time, how many times have you spent money on St. Croix Street? Couple $100,000, $500,000.
Well, last year,
last few years.
Last year, actually, we did some. I mean, the intersections of 9th and 7th were so bad we included that in our mill and overlay project. Now I look at 2nd Street, 2nd and St. Croix. Really, we should do something there.
That's bad.
And 10th Street and St. Croix is bad. So, like I said, this was just suggestions that I brought up. If you would care to not do anything on St. Croix, we could certainly move those monies into something that preventive maintenance on some of these other ones that the Whistler reports are identified. Absolutely.
Because you know that you're going to be doing something more
And like
significant.
Neil said, that's the one thing that's so important is when we have roads that are pretty good shape, in that are rated those 7s and 8s, to get them crack filled before they go down. Crack filling is our best investment. So get those newer streets, and we have been doing that the last couple of years. We've been pretty aggressive on some of the crack filling, some of our better streets. So absolutely, if we can see St. Croix Street as a big project in the next, it's not gonna last 5 years
Right,
if we don't do anything.
right.
So I was just trying to maintain it to get a little more life out of it.
Right.
I get it.
I think one of the keys in here, for Tom is, he's got a good list of streets that he's recommended for this year that Karen's working on. But if you know your next 5 years worth of streets
Right.
and have an allotment there, then you can make maintenance decisions. Do I want to sit there and continue to throw money at these, knowing that I'm going to reconstruct them? Or should I redirect more money into preventive maintenance on other streets?
Exactly. And so it doesn't mean necessarily that we do it all now. It means we see it on the 5-year plan, we plan for it, and so maybe, like you said, we do take some of those monies away, knowing that it's gonna be redone in 2 years, or 3
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good planning.
It's good planning, but realistically, these reports are great, but go out there and drive, we know it's bad. It's not gonna get any better, we keep putting a Band-Aid on it. I'm not opposed to a 5-year plan, but we gotta move a little faster on some of this stuff, besides just wasting money on it.
You could plug
We
$1.5
seem to
million
get by.
in there every year and it might be faster.
I mean, I like what you've done, the fire department has done it beautifully over the year for apparatuses. Now you've gotten your capital budget request, every year you're spending on like a more. That's smart planning. Now, I think we're so far behind on our roads, I don't think we have an option. I mean, we do have options, but we need to take care of these roads. I've said it before, I've been saying it for years. It's not gonna get any better, and it's not gonna get any cheaper.
No, and yet we saw when Ellers was here last time, I mean, it all comes back to what's palatable. How much do you want to raise taxes to do it?
You know, and I'm willing to do that because that's what's expected of people's tax-paying money, if we can do it and do it right.
And I guess I'd rather see us do it in a way that, I'm not saying, the mill rate's never going to change, but that we do it in a way that people aren't getting, shocked by their tax bill. And
Now, would you rather a gradual increase or a one-time increase, or that's the questions we have to answer.
yeah, right.
But as a representative of my city and my district, I think it's time we need to really address the infrastructure of this community. It's falling apart everywhere, and I know we are. But are we doing it the right, the fast, the wrong? I don't know.
I don't think we're worse than a lot of other places that I know. I drive regularly. I think we've made excellent progress, and I agree we need to
Absolutely.
put more in, to get ahead of it.
Yeah, he's done, and we have, not to
I
pat
haven't
us
done
on the back.
anything.
But you guys have done a great job identifying what our needs are and what we've accomplished this far, but it's just so bad in some spots out there. We are not doing our job as the representatives to get it done faster in some of these areas. The almighty dollar speaks, and you can only be conservative so much and ignore a problem so much that, we just have to spend the money to fix it. It's common sense. That's kind of where I'm coming from. It's just it's frustrating. We can't save the money. What are we saving it for?
No, and Randy, I don't think anyone's talking about saving the money, but I mean, I think
I'm not pointing, in general, I'm speaking.
Yeah.
I'm not pointing anybody's
Yeah.
fingers, but we've been so tight and so conservative on our spending that it's starting to show blatantly. And that's where I'm
Sure.
starting to take issue with.
So it's always, in my mind, a question of balance. How fast do we do it? How do we do it in a way that families aren't, further strapped? It's a rough, the economy's not great.
It's not
A lot of
better.
people out of work, people losing their homes. We have to balance it. It's like, how fast can we do it and still, not stretch people to a point that it's difficult. So am I hearing from the committee, we want to go back to full council and say this is our plan? You know, we'd like to put $1 million a year in. We'd like to be able to look 5 years down the road and plan accordingly. Kurt, are you on board with that? Because, I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Box, you want me to throw that over there?
No, that's all right. I think a plan is absolutely necessary, and I mean, once these reports are put together by Tom and Neil, which you guys have done great, I mean, it's an eye-opener, and it's gonna be an expensive trip ahead, but I don't think we have a choice. But, you know, obviously the next task is to prioritize. But going forward, I don't think we can avoid this sum of numbers, whether it's now or 10 years.
Here's what I wish we knew, is if we did this, then what would the next 5 years look like?
I guess I can say, you know, he has a backlog of 0 after like year 6. But on year 6, you're gonna be going back and crack filling the
Right.
roads you did in year
Right.
1 for maintenance.
Right.
And, you know, general life of a street is 20 years.
Yep. And when you can crack fill it and maintain it, you're
Might
gonna
get
extend
longer.
the life of the road.
I'm certainly not a statistician by any means, but I guess I can't even really fathom this 0 backlog, because we're never are we gonna be able to say, oh, Tom's department doesn't have anything to do this year.
So define 0 backlog. That means 0 streets are at what rate? You know, what?
Well, I think you've eliminated, what a 0 backlog means, you've eliminated the current backlog.
You've got
As Karen said, you know, if you look at it, where are these streets going to be 5 years from now? And if you even look at any of those scenarios, that you look at where they are now and where they're anticipated to be 5 years from now. Well, if it's a street that's a 7 or 8 now, 5 years from now, it's going to be an older 7 or 8. But again, you know, if you crack sealed it, those cracks are going to open up again. You're going to have to go in there. Too much water gets in there. You know, they're on a declining cycle. You know, the whole key is to maintain them as drivable and adequate for as long as you can. So, you know, a 0 in 5 years, you know, I don't think we're ever going to hit the point where there's going to be nothing. But at least what you've done is you've extended the useful life of those streets as long as possible.
Right.
So there must be a number of years or what have you that, you know, we can maintain it at that 7.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there must come a point when no matter what you do, it's going to decline.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, Tom says, you know, he has 20 years. I've always heard it's a 30-year cycle, that if you do something new, you're pretty much good for close to 15 years. Then you're going to have to do one treatment that's going to last you for 7.5, another treatment that's going to last you for 7.5, and then you're starting from scratch again. I mean, that's the cycle that I've always been taught, and you know, they may be talking about things differently. But I mean, I think that's pretty consistent. If you can get 30 years out of a street, you're doing well. But again, that's 2 maintenance cycles in there to get 30 years.
So this would sort of let us get our heads above water.
Yes.
And, I mean, that's kind of what I'm seeing.
What is our current backlog? 4.5 million? Is
4.5.
Yeah.
If you just look at that first sheet, it shows, you know, between maintenance and capital.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing it does is it allows us to, you know, our operating budget, we spend a lot of time fixing potholes. I mean, you know, plus you're improving the quality of our roads, which, you know, I mean, we get calls a lot. So the perception for the community is that, you know, we have a good road system. So, you know, it's going to help our operating budget for sure. Material, you know, I mean, we spend, you know, $20,000 a year just in you know, I mean, asphalt and patching material, and not to say the labor involved. So it's going to help us that way.
Mm-hmm. So realistically, if we were to do $1 million a year, I mean, that's all long-term capital, right? Long-term borrowing.
Great.
Okay.
But we would be able to have the opportunity to take out For example, this schedule, the first year 5, if we did the million, if we identified a project that needs a complete redo.
Right, I mean, I
And
think even
reallocate
if you
the
looked at
funds.
this, I think, and if you go into the back here and look at the streets, I think, the second last page in your handout on the 5-year capital budget, that's pretty much geared towards $1 million a year, except it has a couple other, quote, big projects in there. Tom has, 6th Street in 2016. He's got, we've got Locust and Vine in 2015, subject to the grant. But I think, and at some point in time, probably in 2015, we know we have the 20% share of Wisconsin Street. But I think, what you're looking for is a commitment to get on a program within a finite number of years that will, be a little bit more aggressive and get our streets in better condition, so that hopefully we can hit, a happy norm where we're below that $1 million a year and it's something that's far more affordable.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a very reasonable plan. It's a lot more than we've done in years past, and obviously we only budget a year at a time. We can't bind the hands of future councils, but we
No, but
can.
it's always nice. I mean, that's one of the intents with the 5-year plan with Ellers is that we are looking 5 years
Right.
forward. And I mean, you revisit it virtually every year, but particularly for capital projects, having that 5-year horizon.
Okay. So Tom, or Neil, are you looking for any action?
If anything, when you look at, where are we going to go from here, I think the next step is to have probably some type of meeting with regard to what we're going to send back to Ellers. The Public Safety Committee has looked at it, the Parks Committee has looked at it, and I think if a quick, if Tom wanted to go through some of the projects, especially for the next 2 years, because those would be the things we'd be looking to bond immediately for, to take a look at those, because because what we would do then, I view as the next step is trying to take something to Ellers and say, this is what we have looked at as committees and feel we're ready to move forward with, and then let them look at the numbers and to present a plan for how to do it.
Okay. Thoughts from the committee? Do we need to, what sort of time frame would you be looking for to get back to Ellers?
When you think of it, it'd be nice to get back to them in June, because if we're going to issue debt, you'd probably try to issue debt in July so that we could get the projects going. I know, Karen, you're going to be done with the engineering on the streets that Tom proposed by,
Well, right now we have a planned bid opening to award it, the first meeting in August, I believe it's August 5th. But what we were planning to do on this project, since we don't know quite how much we're gonna spend, we're gonna have a base bid and then alternates.
Okay.
So Tom prioritized which streets he thought were most critical. We'll do base bid, alternates, and then we can work with that funding and with your street maintenance funding for this year. But August 5th, we would like to award the bid at that.
so I think, if we could get some kind of recommendation of a project list to Ellers and let them come back to us. Ideally, we'd like to have that done in June, I would say mid-June, mid to late June. Devin?
The one thing that we need to address fairly quickly is the roof at the First Street. Mike had water in the computer room again, and I don't know that we can wait till August on that. So that's something I just wanted to mention while you're talking about it, that we need to come up with some type of plan for that, whether it's, interim, taking more out of the, I don't know if there is any more in
There is more.
excess capital just to get that project going and then pay it back. But Mike was here tonight too, just to kind of follow up with it. But
I went to the meeting regarding the roof, and it's kind of back to what you were saying, Randy, about St. Croix. We have to fix that roof. And I saw the computer room, and It was kind of embarrassing, to tell the truth.
And I think it
There's
happened
blue
again this
tarps.
week with the heavy rains.
Well, we've had 3 inches of rain, I'm sure.
So we had issues this winter with the melting snow. We thought, well, maybe it was just the snow,
Yeah.
but even last week, now it's with the rain. Now we're starting to, they put tarps over it. Now the servers were overheating. Now it's a mess.
Yeah.
We did have a very good presentation by the Garland Company, which the proposal was quite a bit higher than the original price that I had was, and he went very detailed what you get when you get a single layer roof, which we have on City Hall, and what we put on the city garage. It's a one layer, you have one layer of protection there, and they say it might last 15 years or 20 years. They feel that, a roof like the library, seeing it's a flat roof, it should be have some engineering involved, make sure the drainage is proper, and they're recommending like a 5-layer roof, and we're gonna, I don't know what they said for warranty on that.
Is that gonna be on Thursday's agenda for full council?
I don't know if that will be.
So can you put it on there?
Well, we need to have a firm quote, we need to have,
We already have one from US Communities, don't we?
That would be from Garland. I don't know, I haven't seen that quote, so I don't know exactly what.
mean,
I think it was just that day of the presentation. I know the Mayor Burchill and kind of cornered them and asked them, how much, and they kind of threw out $250,000 to $300,000.
Yeah, it was not a quote.
Wasn't a quote.
It was a ballpark.
I would say if we can get something for that first meeting in June, I know that's a week and a half, keep our fingers crossed. I don't think we're ready right now to put it on the agenda for Thursday unless you can come up with a number tomorrow for me, but.
Can we at least get bids before the first meeting in June?
Well, like
So
Neil
there's
said,
something ready
it's US Communities, every line item has been bid out already.
Okay.
If you didn't, we'd probably be going, Tom, do you feel comfortable writing specs for that roof? If you were gonna bid it out publicly?
No, that was pretty technical stuff. You were at the meeting.
It was interesting because granted, they're businessmen trying to get our business. I understand that. But they kind of hit the head on the nail, or the nail on the head, if you ask me, because they, you can ask them to write a spec, which they'll do. But the bids that come in are all over the globe, because one guy is going to do this, the other says he's going to, but he's not. Whereas they're kind of the general contractor. I don't like awarding it to them, just without any competition, but it's a pretty neat system on the other hand, because then they bid it out, which already has been bid out, so.
But I've heard I've heard 100, I've heard 250, I've heard 300. Has it been bid out?
100,000 was the quote that I got from a guy, that does a single layered,
Okay.
It's called a Duralast roof, which they call the white roof. He mentioned that several times, the white roof. That's a single layer roof. And that was just an estimate. This is a whole different system, what they're gonna do, which included some of the improvements to, not improvements, but the repairs to some of the damage that was done inside.
Yeah, well, that's it. Well, that and, there's metal on the roof that for the 100,000, my guess is.
That didn't even touch that.
Right. And,
They had,
and this all includes new metal and new clips and,
Metal flashing or the metal covering?
you name it, flashing. There was, what is that, the peak? Where those
there's actually
clips?
2 areas that have like a domed part of the roof, and it's metal.
Clips
It's
have
called
come
a
apart.
standing ridge roof. That's starting to rust. Some of the clips and things are not up to even current standards, so they're recommending that roof gets replaced also. Then with this,
Included in the 300? So
Yeah.
this is the whole roof for 300,000?
and the interior repairs, some of the stuff that Mike had mentioned, that for security reasons for the police department, there has to be some walls constructed above the ceiling, above the serving room, for security. I mean, it's just a panel you lift up and you could jump from the hallway into the server room. So there has to be some walls constructed for
There's
security.
also some damage, I believe, in the library, you know.
Sheetrock damage, and then some of the insulation that was in the ductwork needs to be, you know, re-insulated.
But I guess the question is, you know, we need some direction. I mean, if we're just going to get a formal number from them, or do we want to put it out for bid? Because if we're going to put it out for bid, we need to move.
Mm-hmm.
And find someone to write the
We
spec.
have to fix it, so.
And he's just saying how? Do we go out for bid? Do we go with?
Yeah, the spec is,
Garland's.
would be the first thing. And who would write that spec, you know, I have no idea.
But if, at this type of project, you're talking, just because we'd have to publish twice, and, you know, it's, which is fine, I'm just saying, it's gonna be 6 weeks probably then, before we'd be able to do it, you know? Because it would be a public construction project, and
Right.
Or we could go with what you have, well,
US Communities. or-
But I think the company's Garland, but it was bid out through U.S. Communities.
so it's already basically been bid, so we could
Yes.
just approve it.
you could do
Yeah.
that.
Move forward and
Well,
get it
if we,
fixed.
if we can get a firm number from them, and we could put it on the June 3rd agenda.
Mm-hmm. That's
We
what
could
I
do
would,
that.
I think that's what I would suggest. at this
Should we
point.
try to set up a meeting, maybe, you know, Devin and Neil and myself, or Lori, or whoever wants to be, and you have a meeting and discuss this a little further with,
Sure.
with the
So maybe
Garland?
maybe the middle of next week.
Yep.
So that we can get it on the agenda then for,
Yep, we should do that.
okay.
Okay, I can set that up.
Sounds good. Okay, so Neil, you're looking for something by June.
Right. And I think if you looked at 2013 and 14, you know, recognizing that this is going to be a rolling 5 years, but if we get a good look at the next 2 years, because a lot of times we've bonded for 2 years of programs, that it might just help that if you go through, you know, what Tom has listed here, to see, you know, maybe Tom, you want to review the needs that are listed here to see if any of these, obviously, if they're on the list, there's a need. The question is, should they be within 13 or 14, or could they be pushed back a little bit? So, I mean, and that's really the question.
I think the big thing is, and we talked quite a bit about this at Park Board, is Burton Field. That's, you know, a very large, you know, a lot of money involved with that. And I think what we presented to Park Board was that, I think we should look at a needs assessment of our park system. And in 2014, actually, we would like to, you know, update our parks comp plan. So at that point, I think we're, you know, kind of backing off of Burton Field for a little bit. You know, until we get a needs assessment, maybe White Camp Park would be a better fit for a skating rink, or a Grandview Park, or whatever, but I think that would be determined within, you know, our needs assessment. So I think some of the monies in that Burton Park renovation, certainly could be backed off.
In 15, 16,
That's dependent on whatever the needs assessment, you know, whatever we come up with from that.
what's your plan with the 50 right now?
I guess that can be backed off. You know, I
No,
think,
that's what I'm not asking, I guess I'm just, what is your plan for 50 grand on the
we were gonna
restrooms?
start like the grading, site planning, and some of the initial,
So nothing to fix the restroom is what I'm looking
This
at?
is just the planning, or
But-
it's just the engineering, so until we have a plan.
yeah, and as far as, and I know that's a big issue with Burton Field, is the restrooms, seeing that they're one of the only, I think it's the only restroom that doesn't have any sinks to wash your hands or anything like that. The construction is such that it would, you know, it's just way too expensive to, you know, to tear up the, you know, the floors and the walls and put drains in for sinks and things like that. I don't think it would be worth it. The
Well, that old
condition of,
building, it's not worth.
it's just not worth it.
Okay, there were
So-
there were three different people talking when I asked what the 50,000 was for.
The 50,000 is in there, we put it in there because it was 100,000, I believe, before, I have it somewhere, but we took it out because they weren't sure of how much we should put in there. If we decided to put some sort of a portable restroom or redo the restrooms or put a portable warming house. It's kind of a number. I talked to Neil about it, and we just put that number in. It can go away, or it can
Well, I don't think it
change.
needs to go away, but I just wanted to know what it is.
So you're looking at possibly getting the plumber to get in there and see if it was worth doing something.
But Tom, you're kind of saying until we have an overall plan,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't make sense. Again, it's like putting money
I don't-
into a
I
street.
don't feel
we're
that it
gonna-
is right at the moment, but like Randy mentioned, I think last meeting, that there is a need to do some kind of repairs at Burton Field, or some least, maybe it's just a general maintenance, maybe we could do some cleaning, painting, just to upgrades, I don't know, but as far as changing the sinks and things like that, I don't think that's worth it, but what else to make it a little better in the meantime? I think it's maybe just more of a maintenance thing.
Okay. So are we going through the list, or do we want to,
So,
Tom, do you want to take another
well,
swing
just
at it?
that was just my thing that I highlighted, was Burton Field. I think we should back off on most of that. Like I did add, after looking at the mower situation, if we're gonna continue mowing our parks and right-of-ways, I just feel that, the money we're sticking into maintenance, we should consider, upgrading, and we could sell the older mowers and get some money out of them. Any other questions on page 1?
Nope.
Tom, did you want to talk about the Grandview Park parking lot, though? That was decreased?
I think earlier we had, I don't know if it was $50,000 or $60,000 for mill and overlay of that. I started, reviewing some of the requests, and after looking at the parking lot, I spoke with one of our guys that we do some of the crack filling and flex patching, and we just feel that we could probably back that off to a crack fill, and probably be closer to, that was 25 was crack fill and seal coat, but after even talking with him again today, he felt that the condition of the asphalt won't allow us to do a seal coat. It just won't adhere to some of the rocks that are exposed, so we just feel at this time we could probably do a crack fill and probably be closer to 10,000 actually. So we could probably lower that down. Precast boat launch, that's one of those things that every year we continually do maintenance at the boat launches. People power launch, or I should say power load their boats, and it pushes the sand away from the existing concrete pads, and we're continually getting contractor in to pull the sand back in. So chain link fence for the landfill, we have security issues out there. We have people getting in and vandalizing things, and for safety, people are running around we have some pretty good sized holes out there. We have pipes and castings and things like that. Then on,
So the hydrant and sewer improvements, Tom, up at the East Garage.
that's what we talked,
Yep.
actually, we talked about that
Yep.
last year. We didn't do anything. And that was a request, or a standard that's set by the water department, that we had to actually put a backflow preventer in from the hydrant to where we fill our street sweeper or other watering equipment. So it was partly to improve that area. The area that of the our parking lot was tore up, and it's another area that when we wash the sweeper out, all the sand goes directly down the hill into Lake Mallow. We thought that it would be wise to put some type of structures in where we could catch at least some of the solids before it goes down into
Use
the lake.
stormwater funds for that?
I don't know if that was the intent for the stormwater funds. I suppose we could, but we're not sitting on a lot.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Because I asked that question quite a bit. And you always say yes, so I figured I had to spend. Okay.
So I still think that need is there. Another thing that we noticed is that we have a couple vehicles that we use for watering, and actually was an old fire truck that we've had in the park system for several years. Another one that we've had an old Dodge that's a 1990 Dodge that we're sticking a lot of money into. We just thought that we'd start upgrading our 1-tons, and then we would use one of our older 1-tons that we use for hauling black dirt and things, and we could slide that into the watering truck. And for the summer, that's a thing that we mounted on a metal frame, and we can slide that in and out of a 1-ton and bolt it for the summertime. Then we could use it for other things after that.
Okay.
So are these 1-ton pickups or dump trucks?
Dump trucks, I'm sorry.
So
Oh, I'm
that should
sorry,
be
it
one
does say
ton, it should say
It should just say
1 ton.
1 ton, and then we just get the chassis, and then we put our dump box on it. Then going down to the roof repair, we have already talked about that. Separate metering for city-owned streetlights. I still have not have a clear answer from Xcel Energy. We've gone through
Down 13.
one person, she's transferred out of the lighting, outdoor lighting now, and then another gentleman retired. Now I have a new person in Eau Claire that I spoke with once or twice, and I can't get a solid answer on. We have a lot of intersections that are, a few that are metered, and the newer ones are metered, but we actually have 6 or 8 that are non-metered. We actually had Foth fill out it's a comparison study between incandescent light bulbs that we currently used to have that we're being charged for, and we've been upgrading our street lights to LED lights, and it's amazing. It's like $200 for the incandescents, and it's like I forget exactly.
It was about $200.
It's like $180 savings per month.
The street light or the signal light?
Signal lights.
Times
So-
6 or 8.
Yeah, so that's the $10,000 was to get the meters installed, but why do that until I get a firm answer from Xcel Energy?
What is the answer? I mean, what is
I
the
just want to
question?
see,
Cost differential.
we need to get our non-metered intersections and our non-metered streetlights off the umbrella policy that they have and they can't seem to find. The person did indicate that Menominee's trying to they're trying to do the same thing we are, and they haven't got an answer yet either. So I'll continue to work with that, but that's something when we do get that, that's where that $10,000 was.
Okay, so the question is, how much are they gonna take off of the umbrella policy once we,
That's something that we have to be determined, but at this point, they're not even responding.
I'm perplexed by that.
I am perplexed. I've been working on this for 2 years, I think.
Well, I think it might be time for someone else to get involved, and I don't know. They need a little pressure, because right now there's no incentive for them really to.
But it's a big incentive for us to be
It's a huge
aggressive.
incentive for
And
us,
zero
but
for
it's
them.
zero for them. So,
Well, my emails aren't, and phone calls, I haven't accomplished much.
well, I think, I'd like to ask the mayor if we could get some backup support and if Catherine could give them a call, because it's time they find the policy under which we're being charged. That's
there's
ridiculous.
gotta be some basis, and if we take stuff off of the umbrella, the basis has to come down, so.
Maybe we can have, the mayor or Catherine, maybe Dr. Trudy. I mean, I know Trudy's been at some of the meetings.
And she has, and she's been helpful, but she gave me the, name of this other lady, and I haven't had any response.
Maybe,
Yeah.
someone higher up than us, if you want to say that. And maybe there's someone higher up, and
We pay them a lot of money. They
Yeah.
could figure out what policy we're being charged under.
I'll follow up with Tom on that.
Downtown garbage cans, after we visited with the disposal people couple weeks ago, We talked about the downtown garbage cans. One of the biggest problems that they have is that they physically have to get out of their truck and take the liner out of the trash cans we have that we're considering replacing. They suggested that in other places, in St. Paul, Minneapolis, other communities, actually they have a kind of a decorative plastic can that they can, that has a lid with a hinge on it. They can actually go around, clamp it, lift it up, dump it, and put it back down, and it would be, easier for them. And not only that, I think we had $60,000 for the decorative metal
We had
containers like
30.
we have.
No, it was 30.
30.
Yeah.
And we feel, I guess, based on what the cost that they have with these plastic cans, they look very nice. It'd be closer to 15,000.
I could present it with the bench thing if you want.
Yeah, I think it should be combined with the bench
Yep.
item, but I think we should look at room tax dollars too. I guess one concern I would have with do they care about placement? I would think they can only reach so
I
far
think right
in
now,
from the
last week I
curb.
counted them, I think we have 18 downtown currently.
I guess what I meant was,
But it's
they
just-
must care how close to the curb the trash receptacles are. And right now, they're not right at the curb, are they?
Pretty close.
Are they?
They're pretty
They can
close.
reach pretty
Okay.
far with those trucks.
And then they would come through presumably early in the morning.
Before, yeah.
The other problem is the ones we have down there are so small that they're just constantly overflowing. I mean, so we're.
These are
getting-
about double
These are double
the size.
or.
But if we
almost
were to pursue room tax dollars, in theory, it could come off of here. Right?
yeah.
I would think.
Yeah. So
That
I'd like us to do that and say,
Take
How
that
soon?
off the,
So do you want it on an agenda like right away? Because we have the information, pretty much.
well, they want to talk about it with the benches also, though.
yeah, and I'm not so concerned about getting them ordered and picking out style, but just that we get it off of the capital.
I think even if it stays on the capital list, just as you might with, a good example might be the streetlights that, when the actual implementation of the streetlights, we may find, I think the key now is to identify projects. I think the follow-up discussion is probably sources of funds. And room tax dollars may be a source of funds. When you look at something like the the LED streetlight project, our savings in the general fund may be the source of funds for that project. So, I think that's another issue. I think the real thing now is to identify what those projects are, and then we can go through and identify potential additional revenue sources, for both parks and public works projects.
So then on the back of the page, 2013, I know I've asked this a couple times with you, Neil and Tom, those items that are all listed there, they need to be done, or we reallocate the money elsewhere. Is that correct?
They're already allocated on the list.
To those specific tasks?
For the street projects,
2013 5-year capital budget.
Yeah, are you looking at this last page? This is already allocated based on the park, whether it's coming out of a park fund or whether it's capital and what year it was funded already.
But have these things been done?
which page are you looking at?
They're getting there.
The absolute last page? None of these have been done.
But they're allocated.
These are projects that are still sitting out there where the council has appropriated funds, but nothing has been done on these. A number of these are this year, but then some of them are also carryover projects.
Okay.
One of those, the second line down, the storage shed relocation, that's in
that's done.
process.
Done.
Done. There you go.
That's there.
Keyless entries going out to bid.
So we were down to traffic signal controllers.
Just, and
25,000.
like we talked about, Neil and I, we just want to make sure that this is on the radar.
Yep.
Traffic signals for Second and Vine and Second and Walnut, right downtown here,
Yep.
are generic, older modeled controllers, and they're so old that we can no longer, they can't be replaced, they can't be repaired, there's no parts for them. So just so you know that in the event that if lightning hit one, or if they all of a sudden, are blow up, that there's no replacements, we don't have any spares, we'd have to replace them. It's like $12,000 intersection. We need a whole new control cabinet and a controller, so.
Okay.
Could the wiring be used?
I'm sorry?
Can the wiring be used? Is it just the,
All the existing wiring from light to light can be used, street light to street light, but it's the cabinet and the controller would be about $12,000. So I just thought we had put it on the radar that
Yep.
we don't have to do it this year, but when it happens, I just wanted to make.
Yep, makes sense. Okay. So what about the mill and overlay costs? I mean, obviously, we don't know what those are. 'Cause
Last week,
haven't-
we did field inspections. Karen and I were out and one day, and then a couple other gentlemen and I were out the other day, and we've got all the measurements. We have all the structures and curb and gutter marked and measured. I think you'll be putting together some costs soon, or?
It's on
Right,
the
we'll put together
agenda.
costs, because we need the assessment, so,
We have
for curb and
this,
gutter removal.
this is on there tonight. Okay, yeah, it's just for that first.
Okay. But I mean, in terms of these large ticket items,
Well,
when will we have a better,
Well, you've already given, for 2013, they've already got engineering, right? Is that,
The only thing that has been appropriated by the Common Council is the engineering. And,
Right.
that agreement with FOTH has been approved.
right.
yeah?
Right. So you're talking, Lori, like the big Gateway Boulevard, or the big cost, large
Yeah.
cost there.
Yep.
And that's where, earlier I said, I think the best way to proceed is Tom identified maybe a street or two that should be base bid, that we do it for sure.
Yep.
And then the rest we can put as alternates, so we
Right.
can decide after the bids come in.
So we just, I mean, those numbers are just there, till we know more specifically what the cost is. Okay.
Yeah.
Curb and gutter, sidewalk curb and gutter?
Generally, that's something that we've been doing every year, and I think I did mention that as our sidewalks have improved, that we should kind of steer our sights on some of the walk paths. I think this year I did get a rough cost on crack filling and a seal coat on the walk path on Crestview Drive from Hagan Street to Carmichael Road, in front of the Luther Chevrolet and those. So I think we should start, considering some of our walk paths also.
Okay. And then the grant request for Vine and Locust.
That's in, and that's half the price. It's gonna come in around $4,000.
Okay.
Here you go, Randy.
I think our original request was up to like 4,400, but we'll be under that.
Okay. And then the back page, we've already talked about, has been allocated.
I think
And/or approved.
at the last meeting I wasn't at, we talked about the, is it on here, the backup generator?
It's under 2014. You haven't really gone down 2014.
Okay, but
except
that's-
for the mowers and the trucks and things, so.
But I don't know if Mike wants to address the generator, if that's something that should be considered sooner than later. I know the last winter storm that we were down for 4 or 5 hours, I think the people at City Hall were not working for about 5 hours, and I think it took about 5 hours to get everything all changed, Mike?
When we lose power in this building, I have backup power that will last approximately an hour. And if we go beyond that, if we get the notice, the system calls us, if we can get in here beforehand and shut it down in a controlled way, it takes us 3 to 4 hours to get everything back up. If it goes down just as a crash, it will take us 4 to 8 hours to get it back up. We're still running the I-Series here, but it will still be several hours that people won't have computers or access to that. The phone system goes down at the same time. So I have a 1 hour window that I can provide power to the phone system and to the computers. At the First Street building, we have a backup that kicks in, and so when we have a power issue, system keeps working. Here, if it goes down, it's a half a day to a day to get everything back up working.
And are we still thinking 60,000 is
I did go and we did
reasonable?
some, had some people actually come in and look and seen exactly how much we need for, we had it sized up, and we got some quotes from 3-4 places here, and I don't feel that 60,000 is out of line.
Okay.
The one quote from Cummings, I shouldn't say that. One quote from one of the people that looked at our project felt that the unit would be a little over $33,000, but then you have another, we have to get piping from the gas meter in the front of the building back to there, and then you still need the electrical hookup from the unit to the transfer switch inside the building.
Okay.
He felt that it was, would be probably less than 20,000, so I guess, we're looking at still 53,600. That would be just, still have to bid it out, so it may be a little less than that.
So I'm looking at, we've taken 10,000 off the Grandview parking lot. We took 50,000 out of the park, Burton Park. And we took 15 off of garbage cans if we're gonna go to the room tax dollars for that. So are you telling me we've spent the money that we saved? I mean, if you move the generator up?
The other thing to look at is, the current thing that, unit that we have, it's a surplus Army generator that's on a trailer. It takes an army of people to get that from our building to the location. The problem with that is that generally when we have a storm like we had the other day, we have basically our full crew of guys out plowing or moving trees if it happens to be a windstorm. And it takes 3-4 people to get this thing hooked up. By the time we would get a call, get it out of the garage, and then get it down to this location and hooked up, it's going to be over an hour. It'll probably be closer to a couple hours.
Yeah.
Plus, we already, if during the, a big storm event, we have our guys all busy doing other things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, the thing that we could do is, hopefully we'd get some money for it. It's on a pretty good trailer, and maybe we get a few dollars for the sale of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So this is big enough to operate this whole building?
We did go through XL Energy. We found our peak demand for the last 2 years. I think it's 59 or 57 kilowatts, even, like in the hottest summer months. One was in June and one was in July. And they felt that it was, we'd need a 75,000 kilowatts. So they said if we ever had any expansion or, additions to the city hall, that they would recommend 100 kilowatt.
Okay.
And that's what we quoted.
In the interest of time, are we going to go all the way through 2014, or did we just want to address the generator, bump it up into this year, and?
That's up to Devin and Mike. I mean, I wanted them here to, they lived through the moment last couple weeks ago.
One of the things I just asked Mike, a question about, you're looking at two different things. Number one, if the concern is computers and servers, obviously the cost for Mike to extend his, his ability to have backup power from 1 hour out to 5-6 hours is far less than a backup generator for the whole
the entire
building. So,
building.
Mike, if you want to.
Yeah, to extend the power, one of the units, they cost $1,000, will give me close to an hour. So for about 6,000, I could extend that. That would keep the servers up. What it wouldn't keep up is the system. So the servers would run, but you wouldn't be able to be on your computer, or Deb wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, the air conditioning's, if it was in the summer, the air conditioners wouldn't be running either.
Mm-hmm.
But for 60, you could run this place and you wouldn't even know we were off the grid.
Yep, and I want, we talked about, natural gas and, as soon as the power goes out, it's an automatic transfer switch and it's similar to what we have down at the library, although the one at the library is a diesel.
The one at the library, whenever they test it, we're there to watch it, and nothing is affected. Most people have no idea that it's been tested, and we're running off the generators. And the changeover is seamless, and it just runs the whole building.
We have one over at the fire hall too, so it'd be similar to that if you care to look, it's on the backside of the fire station.
So we're talking about the fire department and the police department. But that's a valid question, is do we have to have a backup generator that keeps everything going in City Hall, or is it to, secure the...
Worst case scenarios, look at the weather nowadays and what it's doing. Do we have a functional government, functional government for city residents to call when a natural disaster happens or something? If we don't have power, we don't.
Right now, our phone system, after about 30 minutes, goes down. That's what I have for backup on that. And I could put more on there, but what happens is you have little bits and pieces in between. You've got switches and routers and individual computers and the air conditioning. So we could keep parts of it running, but we wouldn't have a functional building.
Right.
Wouldn't you think we'd have that prepared? Or I suppose we're using the other trailer mounted for emergency response? For emergency management?
Marty, Chief Jensen was looking into that. He's going to be doing something on that. Didn't he just was talking about that today? The chief, about setting up a plan.
Communication center somewhere.
Yes, communication
Either
centers.
here or down at the library.
But
I
I
mean,
think...
here again, it's money that I don't wanna spend any more than the next, but this day and age, I just feel like we need to be able to run city government. I mean, if the police department's running, the fire department's running, but City Hall is down, that seems.
City Hall and EMS, which is out of this building now.
Okay. So, what are we thinking? We move it up into 2013 and
Yeah.
just kind of backfill where we cut some other expenses out?
Yeah. I don't know. You're not looking for a formal action?
I don't think so. I mean, I think Neil can, right?
I think what we'll do is, based upon the input from the committee, we'll put this together. We'll take it to Ellers. Ellers will kind of recast it and say, if this is the plan you want, this is what it's going to cost you. And I think the next step would be probably to go back to the Finance Committee, and I think the last Finance Committee meeting where we had this discussion, all the members of council were there. And I think that's probably the next step before, and, if there's a comfort level at that point, I think then we may sit there and probably look to both approve this plan and potentially authorize Sean to go ahead with, a debt issuance.
Okay.
Another option might be, and maybe we can discuss it briefly at the end of the meeting, Thursday night would be to have a special meeting, because it always seems that we're up against a time crunch and then we get bored or, lose interest.
Yeah.
I hate to say that, but if you get towards the end of the meeting, it sometimes,
Yeah, well, when there's other things on the agenda and,
This is a good special
and I think the
meeting
June
topic.
3rd meeting may have quite a bit on it as well, so.
okay.
So that, maybe Thursday night, I'll bring that up at the end to see if you want to schedule a special meeting, maybe between the 2 June meetings or something. Okay.
All right. Neil, do you feel like you have enough from us on 2013?
I think we do.
Okay. Thank you for bearing with us.
Good job on that Whistler report. That's pretty,
I'll show you anytime you want to do it.
Okay, next item on the agenda, item number 3, stormwater inventory and stormwater GIS plan.
This is more just a project update. At the last Public Works Committee meeting, we were directed to go back and work with the water department. We have, we're looking at the program they currently use, CityWorks, and we're comparing that to our utility program, and we're gonna make a matrix kind of showing Tom how's it the same, how's it's different. in the end, I think we'll be going to City Works because the water department likes their program. They've used it all the time. It would be a difficult sell, I believe, to get them to change. So we're gonna try to integrate and work with them to get the storm sewer system and to make sure we get the information that Tom likes, which would be your mobile app, to be out there with an iPad looking right at the structure and be able to put that information in. We're concerned that City Works may not have that capability right now, but just to let you know, just a project update, that's where we're sitting.
So we are trying to integrate what we're
Yes,
doing with
we're
water.
trying to
That's
integrate.
Would that be possible to get our tree sites on there also on, as an extra layer? And not only that, but, you know, as we're trying to work with our sign inventory, you know, and that all has GPS and coordinates on that.
Yeah.
Also, would that be just another layer to that, as something we should consider?
I will have that checked into too, Tom.
Okay. Anything else on that, Karen?
No, that's it.
All right, jumping down to item number 5, review engineering proposal for topographic survey work for Buckeye Street.
Okay, well, as Tom stated, we were out doing the preliminary street investigation for the 2013 street improvement areas. And I have to say, it went really well. The preliminary field investigation, First Street took a while, but all the other streets, I was concerned that some surprises would pop up or drainage issues and we'd have to go out there with the leg and transit and get some information. And that didn't happen, except on Buckeye Street. That was the first street we looked at. We walked out there and Tom and I and another colleague, it's like, well, that curb and gutter has to be removed from 2nd Street all the way to 1st Street. There's areas that it's just settling. Once you remove curb and gutter on both sides of the street, we need information so we can tell the contractor where to put the elevation of the curb and gutter back in. So it looks like that street may now become a reconstruction instead of a mill and overlay. And with that, we would need a survey of Buckeye Street. However, we would need a survey of Buckeye Street anyways with the storm sewer, not necessarily the whole street, but the storm sewer, the inlets and the manholes, because we're talking about reconstructing and doing some work on Buckeye Street storm sewer. So I thought we could combine the two items together. The good news is that our preliminary field investigation and the price that I had estimated is coming in less. So we could include this $1,700 in the preliminary field investigation, so phase 1 of our street improvement project. Put that in there and we still would be several $1,000s under the estimate.
Did you catch that?
Almost like getting it for free.
I didn't say that.
She's not done.
No.
I'm joking.
But I mean, another thing that we found on the street improvement project is an area on Gateway Circle. Is that the street that goes down?
Found Amanda Sports.
Yeah, where we thought that'd be a mill and overlay. When we were out there, Tom looked at it and said, we don't have to do a mill and overlay on this street. We can just do some crack filling and seal coating. So that area is going to be taken off the road improvement project and put on street maintenance. But now Buckeye, instead of being a mill and overlay, looks more trending towards a reconstruction. So what I would like to do, I guess, is to take this survey, if you approve us to go ahead with the survey and put that $1,750 onto the phase 1 of the preliminary field investigation.
So this one. So the Gateway Crestview to parking lot, is that what you're talking about? Oh, that's Boulevard.
No, it would be,
You turn right by Tires Plus, behind the Home Depot.
The first 40 or 50 feet need to be milled and overlaid, Karen.
and then after that,
After
right.
that, I think we can get by with
Let's
the
list it.
crack filling or flex patch.
So is it on
Karen's
this?
just asking, where is it on our
Yeah.
5-year capital?
It's on our street project.
Right, it's
Oh, it
included
went over-
under Great Gateway Boulevard, Crestview to parking lot.
included in that.
Yeah, it's included in that whole area, because
Oh,
we
I
also
see.
have Center Drive and Gateway Circle.
Well, I'm glad it suggested that, because my thought and my assumption is that Buckeye Street was gonna be a total reconstruct, and I wasn't in favor of mill and overlaying it,
Mm-hmm.
because you know there's damage in there.
Yeah, it's bad shape.
It's settling.
Yeah, that's what we saw, this curb and gutter is just going up and down, which is showing the areas of settlement.
unfortunately, another street.
Right.
So you are looking for action on that?
As Neil here, I guess what I would like is if we could just put it, the survey under the part 1 of our preliminary field investigation and not have to go on to council to get approval, just that we could recommend that it goes.
So you're just reallocating it, basically? right?
Basically, that's correct.
Problem with it?
No problem.
Okay. Anyone have an issue? Okay. So, consider it approved. On the project update?
Okay, the construction started out there. Some public projects, the Lake Malibu Storm Sewer Outfall number 2. We're gonna start working out there again, some riprap. We'll do the fencing and the landscaping that was approved in the change order 2, and then the driveway restoration. Hudson Center, that's the location that's right off of 94 and Carmichael Road. That used to be the old rest area. The work is going out there, and they got the sanitary sewer water main installed, and they're working on storm sewer this week. And then Red Cedar Canyon is finishing up their final roads in that development, putting in the sanitary sewer and the services on the Valley View area, and then putting in the townhomes area. You can see the townhomes are already being constructed. On the street improvement project, we have finished the street course, and actually right before I left, we already got the report. I didn't get a chance to look at it, but we can see our pavement thickness and our gravel. And Buckeye Street, the storm sewer, where we want to get in and look, our river levels are still high and going up with this recent rain. So once that goes down, we're going to be inside doing the investigation on the storm sewer there.
Okay. Questions from anyone? Okay. Well, items for future agendas. We're going to talk about benches. Probably benches and trash cans. We won't have bids back, right? You said not till August. Next meeting will most likely be June 25th, 5 p.m. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
What's this one?